Good morning, everyone. The Policy Committee, September 19th. I call the meeting to order. All members are present. I need approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Yes. So move.
Second.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You 4-0. Next up is I need a motion to approve the August 15th open session minutes.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I can't hear anything. Huh. There you go. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can you hear?
Thank you. Next up is policies for second review.
Good morning. Can you hear us now, Ms. Heintel? Can you hear me?
I don't think she can hear.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Can you
good.
hear?
Okay, policy 1-16 is the first one for second review. It's Code of Ethics for school board members. This policy was reviewed in August with this committee and by the board in September. There's been no stakeholder input on this policy, and then staff would ask for this to go for approval at the October board meeting. If you remember, the change to this policy is based on a recommendation from the model policies of the North Carolina School Boards Association.
Any questions?
Motion to send to the full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, the next one before you is 4-13 student assignment. This policy was reviewed in August by this committee and by the board in September. There's been no stakeholder input, and staff would ask that this go for approval at the October meeting. If you remember, this revision is based on a recommendation from staff.
Motion to approve, recommend full board approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4. Thank you. Next up is policies for first review.
Okay, all of these policies are fall under the same category. So they are proposed revisions or newly drafted policies based on recommendations from the North Carolina School Boards Association model policies as reviewed by Campbell Shatley as well. I've also reviewed the CMS policies in drafting these, and they are obviously all focused on the newly passed Parents' Bill of Rights. And these have been reviewed by all of cabinet staff. Their staff is deemed appropriate, and our Title IX coordinator. So the first one is policy 3-01, staff responsibilities. The revision to this policy is based upon the changes that were added to North Carolina General Statutes 114A-20 and 114A-10. And staff would ask that this policy go for first review at the October meeting. And I can answer any questions anyone has.
Ms.
Any
Morris,
questions?
during these discussions, when it went through these various stakeholders, was there robust debate on these concerns and recommendations?
There was robust activity, not a lot of debate, because these are coming straight from the statute.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Can we have a motion to send 3-1 to first
Motion to
review?
send to
for
the whole board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 4-0. Next, surveys of students.
Yes, policy 4-15. The revision to this policy is based upon revisions to North Carolina General Statutes -76.25 A11, 7645, 7665, and 402.14. And staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting as well.
Any questions? I have none.
No questions.
Motion to send to the full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 4-0. Next up is policy 5-1.
Yes, selection of instructional materials. The change in this policy, the revision is based on change to 115C-76.35B3. And staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting as well. And that changes the parental right to inspect materials.
Any questions? It's just a small change.
Motion to approve, recommend approval of the full board.
Thank you. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. Next up is policy 5-7, health education program.
Okay, this, the revision to this is based on 115C-76.55 of the North Carolina General Statutes as revised. And staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting. And this deals with instruction in grades K through 4.
Motion to send to the whole board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up is a proposed new policy, parental involvement.
Yes, this new policy is also being proposed to meet the requirements of the Parents' Bill of Rights, including Chapter 114A of the General Statutes and 115C, Article 7B. We did not have a policy on parental involvement or parental engagement. We had one for Title IX or Title I, but not just in general. So I have pulled the entire draft from the School Boards Association model policy and added the requirements of the newly adopted law. And so staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting.
Just a comment. I'm glad that sentence is in there defining parent to include legal guardians, legal custodians of students under 18 years of age, so grandparents raising grandchildren and foster parents.
Yes, we try and do that throughout the policies just to make it clear that it covers anybody who stands in the stead of a parent.
Right. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Thank you. Next up is proposed new policy, student health services.
Okay, this policy is being proposed to meet the requirements of General Statute 90-21.10B. Again, we did not have this policy, so I pulled the entire draft from the North Carolina School Boards Association model policy with the required additions for the newly adopted law. The change to this policy is the language in the first paragraph addressing notification to parents, and staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting.
Motion to send.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Michelle, does this policy in any way address, if you'll recall, I can't remember how many years ago, but we had an issue with a student who was in middle school who needed daily medical, he had some paralysis, and the family had requested his personal nurse in light of the company that we contract with, if I recall correctly. Does this policy give parents that flexibility to bring in their own nurse to provide services since it talks about written request of parents for a health practitioner, do you think this policy would address that situation?
It does not address that specifically. And part of that is because we contract with nursing services to meet those child needs, and we do try to work with the family if we have, we do try and contract with the nurse that the family's using so that there is consistency in treatment. But sometimes we just can't facilitate that. So that doesn't always happen, but I do know that we do try very hard to work with families on that.
Okay.
Dr. Houlihan, you seem like you had something to say? Oh, okay.
I was just listening to Michelle. I was going to agree with what she said, that we, in this situation and others, we try to work with the family as much as we can.
Mhm.
Okay, so I take a motion to send this to the board for first review.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is proposed new policy, criminal behavior.
Yes, this is the last one for first review today. And this policy is to meet the requirements, the changes to North Carolina General Statute 114A-10. Again, we didn't have this policy, so I pulled the entire draft from the School Boards Association with the required addition of the newly language to address the newly adopted law. The language in this is the last full paragraph, which addresses notification to parents when their child is suspected to have been the victim of a crime on campus. And staff would ask that this go for review at the October meeting as well.
I have a question. It says any student who the principal reasonably believes has engaged in criminal behavior. Can you explain that a little to me?
I'm sorry, where are you reading that from?
The very first sentence.
First line.
Okay.
Yeah, the first line. Because believing and knowing can be different.
Yeah, I had a question about that too.
Can you address that, Attorney Morris?
Well, I mean, what it's intending to say is that once they've done their investigation, that they reasonably believe their investigation has demonstrated that the child has engaged in criminal behavior. And so we can put that any student who the principal reasonably believes after completing an investigation, if that would help clarify that part.
Could I also add something instead of reasonably believes? After an investigation, principal has probable cause.
Probable cause is the standard for criminal law, not school. Our standard is much lower than that, which is why the reasonable belief is there.
All right.
Yes,
Okay. Makes sense.
I agree. I agree with
Great
Michelle.
area to me.
So that's kind of principal suspects or reasonably believes. I would say that's a little stronger than suspects. Would that say reasonably believes?
Yeah, I can add language as any student who the principal reasonably believes, then comma, after the completion of a thorough investigation, comma, has engaged in criminal behavior. Or let me put after a completion of a thorough investigation at the very beginning.
I think that's too late.
I like that.
I think that's too late. I think what we have here is appropriate. That's too late. A principal needs to have the ability to recognize something that is wrong and be able to act upon it, whether that action is getting law enforcement involved or they themselves administratively getting involved. That principal needs to be able to protect that school. And so that reasonable believes is appropriate verbiage.
Could you give Reverend Bencher?
No, go ahead.
Yes.
Could you, and I'm trying to get clarity, and I hear exactly what you're saying. The principal should have authority to protect their school. Give me an example of reasonably believes.
Well, how about if a student brings a gun?
Let me. You give me the example, Gary.
Yeah, I'm going to
Okay.
say let's put this in real life terms. A student brings a gun to school. The principal, for whatever way, the principal finds out right away while the student is there with the gun. Does this policy, with that change in wording after an investigation, preclude that principal from taking immediate action to suspend the student or send him home, or to take action before one would say, in that case, a full investigation has been completed? So let's look at it in real world terms.
Okay.
The law allows that in an emergency situation,
Mhm.
where, similar to what you've described, that a principal can remove a child from the educational setting as the investigation is being conducted. That's comes from a Supreme Court case, Goss versus Lopez.
Okay.
In general, we do an investigation first before we separate the child from the educational setting.
Mhm.
And then there are certain provisions in state law under North Carolina General Statutes 115C288 that require a principal to notify law enforcement when they have a reasonable belief that a criminal activity has been committed on school grounds.
Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Kilpatrick, for that question. And I'm going to take a stab and say, I know where you're going. And,
Yeah, tell me where am I
and
going?
that could be abused. Folks could take unrighteous liberties with that. And but we are in a world now where that principal needs to have every tool in their toolbox to protect that school. We don't want to be the next school system on the news where a principal for a policy went through several steps instead of taking action. And if we find a principal is abusing that with any segment of the population, abusing that, to one group is reasonably believed to have done something more so than another group, then that principal need to be dealt with reasonably by that man on their screen here, our superintendent. And so we need to make sure, Dr. Houlihan, that folks are not taking unrighteous liberties, just arbitrarily, reasonably believing that folks are doing stuff and sending them home. But we cannot hamstring. That principal needs to be able to act, and that principal needs to be able to act with the swiftness.
So, and I agree with that. And the reason I'm asking, I'm not an attorney, only two of us on this line are. So that's why I'm asking these questions, so that I can have clarity. But I do, and even though this is going for first review, it's still I think it can, even though what you're saying, Reverend Benson, about abusing, I think wording is everything. There are some individuals that you may suspect may have committed a crime and could be innocent because of words, because of something that has been said or done. So I just want us to cover all areas, the students, principals, and to make sure that we're not going to be held responsible for charging someone for something that they did not do. So thank you, Attorney Morris, for explaining it. And if you could send me that case, I'd like to look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I summarize what y'all are saying? Maybe make sure I have this right.
You want to summarize for yourself, Gary?
Yeah, you can't summarize.
So I
for me.
understand where you two are coming from. If I understand this right, John, you feel like inserting the part about an investigation would help protect the innocent, if you will. And Jimmy, you're afraid by adding that we might be tying the hands to some degree of the principal to take prompt or immediate action. Am I hearing that right?
From my perspective, absolutely.
Okay. John, is that where you're coming from on that?
Somewhat, and like I said, I'm going to do some more research, and I want to talk more with Chair Heintel and Attorney Morris to know more about what this all entails and what it looks like. So you're somewhat correct in how I'm feeling, but again, that comes from, I'm going to do some more research on it and conversation.
Okay, so we'll come back in October with
Yes, ma'am.
the second review. Yep. Okay, so I need a motion to move this along.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next meeting is October 17th at 8 a.m. And I need a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have
Thank
a good
you.
day, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yep.